Hey, it's Kate. I hope you're having a great day. What's in the garden today is how to choose fall crops and some fall crops you should not sow from seed in August. So, a fall garden can be a tricky time to plant. In the spring, the temperatures are rising, the days are getting longer, and there's so many days ahead in the season, the possibilities seem endless. But the fall is the complete opposite. The temperatures are falling, the days are getting shorter, and it's a race against time for your crops to mature before the first frost comes. I mean, you're not wrong. Which brings us to the first thing you need to know when planting a fall garden. When is your average first frost date? The easiest way to figure this out is just ask the internet. You can search for first frost date and your local region. You can even ask Google how many days there are until that date. For me, that happens to be about 95 days, which is great. That seems like tons of time. But hold on, it's not that simple. You can't just pick any crop that says it'll mature in less days than that. The next factor is the days are getting shorter. The sun will be lower in the sky, so it's less intense, and the temperatures are falling as well. All of these factors contribute to plants just plain growing slower. I don't think there's an easy way to calculate this difference in growth, but imagining your first frost date is 2 weeks sooner, maybe even 4 weeks sooner, depending on your climate, could help you account for the slower growth. So now we've kind of figured out how much useful time we have left in our season, and we can choose any crop that has faster days to harvest listed on its seed packet, right? No, there's still 2 more things to consider, including heat-loving crops versus cool weather crops. And this is something you just have to know or have a feel for. For example, things in the brassica family tend to like cool weather, and solanaceous crops like tomatoes and eggplants like the heat. So if you're not sure, looking it up is the easiest, best way to go. So cool weather crops that mature before our first frost date, including a buffer for slower growth. The last thing to take into account, and this one seems so important, I'm not sure why I don't hear about it more, is days to maturity and days to harvest. What is it and how is that calculated? So days to maturity and days to harvest are basically used interchangeably. Technically, one might be more appropriate than the other depending on the particular crop, but basically that's when a crop is ready for you to start picking, like loose leaf lettuce or peas, or completely harvest the crop, like carrots or radishes. So then how is it calculated? Well, for anything where the seed packet suggests you should sow it directly into your garden, like root crops and some other things, this is pretty straightforward. The days to harvest is an estimate counted in days from the day the seed germinates until the day the crop could be harvested if grown in ideal conditions. So for the case of a fall crop with lower light and lower temperatures, it's probably going to grow slower because it's not ideal conditions, so we should add a buffer to account for that slower growth. That's the easy part, but here's where it gets confusing. There are a lot of crops that recommend you start them ahead of time in trays or whatever, and then you transplant them out into your garden as young plants. And broccoli is one of them. Let's use that as an example. This is Gypsy Broccoli. It says it has good heat resistance, tolerant to powdery mildew, and grows well in spring, summer, and fall weather. It sounds like an excellent choice for a fall garden. And it is. It says it matures in 62 days, plus 7 to 10 days for germination, and that's all written on the seed packet, which is very standard. But it's not the whole story. What seed packets usually don't mention is this days to harvest count is from transplant, not from germination. And I'm not sure why seed packets usually leave that out. So let me explain why this is a problem. When you start seeds in trays, they typically grow there for 4 to 8 weeks, and then you transplant them out into your garden. But when I look at a seed packet and it says 62 days to maturity plus 7 to 10 for germination, that's not the whole story. We've skipped over the entire seedling period. So add another 4 weeks, and that brings our example up to 90 days of growing plus 7 to 10 for germination. I do have to give this seed packet credit. It does in fact mention how long you should keep the seedlings before transplanting them out, but that's not always the case, and it's never clear how to account for that time. So as of right now in August, I do not have time for this crop to grow from seed and mature in my garden before my first frost. Sorry, this is feeling kind of rambly. It just blows my mind that this information isn't more prominent, and that's standard practice. Checking days to harvest when you're choosing crop varieties is normal, but the number you see on the front of seed packets isn't the whole story. Anyways, the summary is for some crops, days to harvest is from germination, and for other crops, days to harvest is from transplant. Some seed companies might have more information on their websites or in a seed catalog, but sometimes the easiest way to tell which way they're counting is based on how they recommend you start the seed. If it recommends sowing the seeds directly into the garden, then days to harvest are from germination. But if it recommends starting them ahead of time or indoors, then days to harvest are from transplant. So there's a number of things that both grow well as fall crops and fall into this transplant category. The thing is, if you want to start them from seed, you might need to do that in July because August might be too late. On the other hand, if your local garden shop has seedlings, that might be the best option in August. So what are these crops that fall into the fall transplant category? What's it too late for? Whoa, oh, I think I was just in the wrong video. Okay, you guys want to hear a list of things not to sow in August, right? I'm not going to get sprayed again. Okay, please take this list with a grain of salt. I have given you the power of knowledge for you to decide if you have time to grow something or not. So as I mentioned, from seed, if I sow broccoli in my garden from seed in August, I will not have enough time to get a harvest before my first frost. And the same goes for Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, leeks, and onions. But you know your garden best, so you can make the final decision for yourself. Now, on the other hand, the life of a gardener is to keep experimenting and be forever optimistic. So, am I going to completely give up on these crops and write them off for this year? No, you're in my video. Just trying to help. Do you want to spray me? No. Well, are you going to give up on the crops? No. I'm gonna give them a try anyways. So I am sowing broccoli anyways, and onions, and some Brussels sprouts as well. Is it gonna work? Maybe. The thing is, in my garden, all of these crops will overwinter just fine. Onions and leeks can be harvested any time before they flower late next spring. Broccoli will grow and probably make flower heads and side shoots, even if they're smaller than normal. The Brussels sprouts, that's the only thing that might truly fail, and I might not get actual Brussels sprouts. But worst case scenario, it will probably make flower shoots just like broccoli. So it's not a complete lost cause. I just need to temper my expectations. And with that, maybe you've learned something today, or maybe I've muddied the waters and made everything really confusing. If that's the case, I'm so sorry. But also, here is an easy list of fall crops you can start from seed in August, and it will make your fall garden planning easier. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. What are you doing? You do your video, go!